My mom demanded I give my new condo to my sister, claiming she was more deserving. So I refused, and when she threatened to cut me out of the will, I handed her the paperwork showing what her favorite daughter had already done. I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am at 2 a.m., still processing what happened 3 days ago. My hands are literally shaking as I type this, but I need to get this out before I lose my mind. Let me start from the beginning. I've always been the responsible one in my family. While my sister lived her life bouncing between jobs, relationships, and what mom called finding herself, I worked my ass off. 60-hour weeks, side hustles, living in a cramped studio apartment for years just to save every penny I could. My goal was simple: buy my own place before I turned 35. Last month, I finally did it. A beautiful 2-bedroom condo in the downtown area, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The closing day was the proudest moment of my life. I called mom immediately, expecting her to be happy for me. Her response was lukewarm at best, but I brushed it off thinking she was just having a bad day. 2 weeks later, mom called and asked me to come over for dinner. She said she had something important to discuss. I should have known something was up when I arrived and found my sister already there, sitting at the kitchen table with this smug expression I'd seen countless times growing up. Mom didn't waste time with pleasantries. She told me she'd been thinking about my new condo and had come to a conclusion. She believed my sister needed it more than I did. My sister had just gone through another breakup, was struggling financially again, and according to mom, deserved a fresh start in a nice place. I sat there stunned as mom explained how I was young and capable, how I could easily find another place or even move back home temporarily. She said my sister was more fragile, needed stability, and that as the older brother, I should want to help family. The audacity was breathtaking. I asked mom if she was seriously suggesting I just hand over the condo I'd worked years to afford. She nodded like it was the most reasonable request in the world. My sister chimed in, saying she'd always dreamed of living downtown and that it would really help her get back on her feet. I told them both they were insane. This was my home, my investment, my future. I'd sacrificed everything to make this happen. Mom's expression darkened, and she said she was disappointed in my selfishness. She reminded me of all the times the family had helped me growing up, conveniently forgetting that I'd been financially independent since 18, while my sister had been getting bailouts well into her 20s. The conversation escalated quickly. Mom accused me of being ungrateful and materialistic. She said family should come first, and that my refusal to help my sister showed my true character. Then came the nuclear option. She threatened to cut me out of her will entirely if I didn't reconsider. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Mom looked shocked that her ultimate threat didn't immediately make me cave. I told her she could do whatever she wanted with her will, but my condo wasn't up for discussion. My sister started crying, saying I'd always been jealous of her and that this proved I didn't love her. I left that night furious, but also strangely relieved. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to mom's manipulation tactics. But I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, mom called the next day. Her tone was different, more calculated. She said she'd been talking to other family members about the situation, painting me as the selfish son who wouldn't help his struggling sister. She mentioned how disappointed Dad would have been if he were still alive, knowing I'd chosen money over family. That hit hard. Dad had always been the peacekeeper, the one who could make Mom see reason. But he'd been gone for 3 years now, and Mom had become increasingly demanding and manipulative without his gentle influence to balance her out. Over the next few days, I started getting calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins. All of them had heard Mom's version of events, where I was the villain refusing to help my poor, struggling sister. The family pressure was intense, but I held firm. This was my line in the sand. Then Mom played her final card. She called and said she'd made her decision about the will. She was leaving everything to my sister, including the house, Dad's life insurance money that she'd never touched, and all the family heirlooms. She said since I clearly didn't value family, I didn't deserve to be part of the family legacy. I told her that was her choice, but it didn't change mine. She hung up on me. That's when I remembered something that had been nagging at me for months. Last year, I'd helped Mom organize some of Dad's old paperwork. Among the documents was a folder labeled estate planning that Mom had quickly taken from me, saying it was private. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now I was curious. I drove to Mom's house the next morning while she was at her weekly grocery shopping trip. I still had a key from when I used to check on the house after Dad died. I know this sounds terrible, but I needed to understand what I was really dealing with. I found the folder in Dad's old desk. What I discovered made my blood run cold. There were bank statements showing massive withdrawals over the past 2 years. Tens of thousands of dollars, all going to my sister. But that wasn't the worst part. There were loan documents, credit applications, and most damning of all, a power of attorney document that my sister had somehow gotten Mom to sign. My sister hadn't just been getting bailouts. She'd been systematically draining Mom's accounts. The house had a second mortgage on it that I'd never known about. Dad's life insurance money was almost gone. Mom's retirement savings had been decimated. But the real kicker was a document dated just 6 months ago. My sister had taken out a loan using Mom's house as collateral, supposedly for a business venture that I knew had never materialized. The monthly payments were crushing Mom financially, which explained why she'd been so stressed about money lately. I photographed everything and put the folder back exactly where I found it. My hands were shaking as I drove home, trying to process what I'd learned. My sister hadn't just been irresponsible with her own money. She'd been stealing from our mother. That evening, Mom called again. Her tone was different, almost pleading. She said she'd been thinking about our conversation and wanted to find a compromise. Maybe I could let my sister stay in the condo temporarily, just until she got back on her feet. I told Mom I needed to see her in person to discuss this properly. We agreed to meet the next day. I arrived at Mom's house with a manila envelope containing copies of everything I'd found. Mom was in the kitchen, looking older and more tired than I'd seen her in years. She started her usual speech about family obligations and helping each other, but I cut her off. I told her I knew about the money. Her face went white. I placed the envelope on the table and told her to open it. As she looked through the documents, I watched 20 years of manipulation and favoritism crumble in real time. Mom's hands were shaking as she realized I knew everything. She tried to explain, saying my sister had promised to pay it all back, that she was just going through a rough patch. I asked Mom how much money was left in her accounts. She couldn't look me in the eye as she admitted there was barely enough to cover next month's bills. The woman who had just threatened to cut me out of her will had nothing left to leave anyone. Then I told her about the power of attorney document. Mom's confusion was genuine. She didn't even remember signing it. My sister had probably presented it as something routine, maybe even told her it was for something else entirely. The reality hit Mom like a freight train. Her favorite daughter, the one she'd always protected and enabled, had been systematically stealing from her for years. The daughter she'd just threatened to leave everything to had already taken everything. I sat there watching Mom process this betrayal, and despite everything she'd put me through, I felt sorry for her. She'd been so blinded by her need to protect my sister that she'd become the perfect victim. Mom asked me what I was going to do with this information. I told her that was up to her. I could help her get legal advice, help her understand her options, but I wasn't going to make decisions for her. Those days were over. She asked if I was going to tell my sister I knew. I said that depended on what happened next. If Mom wanted to continue demanding I give up my condo to support my sister's lifestyle, then yes, this information would become very relevant to that conversation. Mom was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked me to help her understand how bad the financial situation really was. We spent the next 2 hours going through her statements and documents. It was worse than I'd initially thought. Between the loan payments, credit card debt, and regular expenses, Mom was looking at bankruptcy within 6 months. The house would have to be sold. There was no way around it. The second mortgage and the loan my sister had taken out made it impossible for Mom to keep up with payments on her fixed income. As we talked, Mom started opening up about things she'd never told me. She admitted she'd known my sister was irresponsible with money, but had hoped that giving her access to funds would help her become more stable. She'd been afraid that if she cut my sister off, she'd lose her entirely. I told Mom that her fear of losing my sister had cost her everything, including almost losing me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Update 1. Mom called my sister that night. I wasn't there for the conversation, but Mom filled me in the next day. She'd confronted my sister about the missing money and the unauthorized loan. My sister's response was predictable: denial, followed by excuses, followed by anger when the evidence was presented. My sister claimed she'd always planned to pay everything back. She said she'd been trying to start a business that would make enough money to cover all the loans, and then some. When that fell through, she'd been looking for other opportunities. She accused Mom of not trusting her, and said I'd obviously poisoned Mom against her. Mom asked about the power of attorney document. My sister's explanation was that she'd needed it to help Mom with some banking issues when Mom had been sick with the flu last year. She claimed she'd forgotten to mention it and had never actually used it, which was obviously a lie given the bank records. The conversation ended with my sister storming out, but not before telling Mom that if she sided with me over her, she'd never see her grandchildren again. This was particularly cruel since my sister's kids were Mom's only grandchildren, and she'd been the primary babysitter for years. Mom was devastated. She'd spent decades enabling my sister's behavior, and now she was facing the consequences of that choice. But she was also angry, angrier than I'd ever seen her. She felt betrayed and manipulated, which she was. I helped Mom contact a lawyer to understand her options regarding the unauthorized use of the power of attorney. The lawyer explained that while my sister had technically committed financial elder abuse, proving intent would be difficult, and the legal process would be expensive and emotionally draining. More importantly, most of the money was already gone. Even if we could prove wrongdoing, there wasn't much to recover. My sister had spent it all on her lifestyle, failed business ventures, and paying off her own debts. The lawyer did help Mom revoke the power of attorney and set up safeguards to prevent future financial abuse. We also started the process of understanding exactly what debts were in Mom's name versus what my sister had taken responsibility for. It turned out my sister had been clever about covering her tracks. Most of the loans were technically in Mom's name, but my sister had been making the payments until recently. When her latest relationship ended and she lost her job again, she'd simply stopped paying, leaving Mom responsible for debts she didn't even know existed. Update 2. 3 weeks have passed since the initial confrontation, and the family dynamics have completely shifted. Word has gotten out about what my sister did, though I'm not sure how. Mom insists she hasn't told anyone, and I certainly haven't. But somehow our extended family has learned about the financial situation. The same aunts and uncles who had called to pressure me about giving up my condo were now calling to apologize. They'd heard the whole story and couldn't believe what my sister had done. The family narrative had completely flipped, and now I was the responsible son who'd uncovered his sister's betrayal. I found this shift almost as disgusting as the original pressure campaign. These people were so quick to judge based on incomplete information, and now they were just as quick to switch sides when the story changed. It reinforced my decision to maintain distance from most of the family drama. My sister, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. She wasn't returning Mom's calls, hadn't been by to see the kids, and according to one of my cousins, had been telling people that Mom and I had conspired to frame her for something she didn't do. Mom was struggling with this silence more than I'd expected. Despite everything my sister had done, Mom still loved her and wanted to find a way to repair the relationship. She kept asking me if I thought my sister would eventually come around and apologize. I told Mom honestly that I doubted it. People who are capable of systematically stealing from their own mother don't usually develop a conscience overnight. My sister's pattern had always been to avoid responsibility and blame others when consequences caught up with her. The house situation was moving forward. Mom had accepted that she needed to sell, and we'd started the process of getting it ready for market. The goal was to sell quickly and use the proceeds to pay off the debts, leaving Mom with enough to rent a small apartment. I offered to help Mom with the transition, both financially and practically. I could afford to supplement her income to ensure she could live comfortably, and I wanted to make sure she had support during this difficult time. Mom was grateful, but also guilt-ridden. She kept apologizing for the way she'd treated me, for threatening to cut me out of the will, for not seeing what my sister was doing. She said she'd been so focused on trying to help my sister that she'd taken my stability and reliability for granted. I told Mom that while I appreciated the apology, what mattered now was moving forward. We couldn't change the past, but we could make sure she was taken care of going forward. Update 3. Yesterday, my sister finally broke her silence. She showed up at Mom's house while I was there helping pack up Dad's old office. She looked terrible, like she hadn't been sleeping or eating properly. She told Mom she was sorry, that she'd made mistakes, but had never meant to hurt anyone. She said she'd been overwhelmed by her financial problems and had made poor decisions, but she'd always planned to make things right. Mom listened quietly as my sister explained her version of events. According to her, she'd borrowed the money with every intention of paying it back quickly. The business ventures had been legitimate attempts to generate income, not scams or frivolous spending. She claimed she'd been making payments on the loans until recently, when her personal situation had become impossible to manage. Some of this was probably true. I'd seen evidence that my sister had been making some payments, at least initially. But the amounts involved and the deceptive way she'd obtained access to Mom's finances couldn't be explained away as simple poor judgment. When my sister finished her explanation, she asked Mom to forgive her. She promised to find a way to pay back what she could, though she admitted it would take time. She also asked if she could move back home temporarily while she got back on her feet. Mom looked at me before responding. I could see she wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that my sister had learned from this experience and would do better. But she also knew that enabling this behavior was what had gotten her into this situation in the first place. Mom told my sister that she loved her and wanted to maintain a relationship, but that she couldn't provide financial support anymore. The house was being sold, and Mom would be moving to a small apartment that wouldn't have room for additional occupants. My sister's response revealed her true priorities. She became angry when she realized Mom was serious about not being able to help her anymore. She accused Mom of choosing me over her, of believing lies about her character, of abandoning her when she needed support the most. The conversation escalated quickly. My sister demanded to know where Mom was getting money for an apartment if she was supposedly broke. When I explained that I was helping Mom with living expenses, my sister turned her anger on me. She accused me of manipulating the situation to make myself look good while destroying her relationship with Mom. She said I'd always been jealous of her and had finally found a way to turn Mom against her. She claimed I'd probably planted evidence or lied about what I'd found in Dad's desk. I stayed calm and told my sister that the bank records spoke for themselves. If she wanted to dispute the facts, she was welcome to provide her own documentation showing where the money had gone. She couldn't, of course, because the money was gone and she'd spent it. My sister left that day saying she was done with both of us. She said we deserved each other and that she hoped we were happy with what we'd accomplished. She also said Mom would regret choosing money over her daughter and that I would regret destroying the family. Mom was shaken by the confrontation, but also seemed relieved that she'd held firm. She told me later that she'd been tempted to give in, to offer my sister another chance, but that she'd realized it would just be repeating the same pattern that had created this mess. The house sold faster than expected, and after paying off all the debts, Mom had enough left for a security deposit and several months of rent on a nice one-bedroom apartment. With my help, she'd be able to live comfortably without financial stress for the first time in years. As I write this, it's been 2 months since the initial confrontation about my condo. Mom is settled in her new place and seems happier than she's been in years. She's joined a book club, started volunteering at the local library, and is building a social life that doesn't revolve around managing my sister's crises. My sister has made no further contact with either of us. Through family members, we've heard that she's moved in with a new boyfriend and is telling people that Mom and I conspired to steal her inheritance. The irony of this claim isn't lost on anyone who knows the real story. I still live in my condo, the one that started this whole mess. Every morning when I wake up in my own place, I'm reminded of how important it was to stand my ground. If I'd given in to Mom's initial demand, I'd be homeless now, and my sister would have just found new ways to exploit the family's resources. The relationship with Mom is stronger than it's ever been. We talk regularly, and she's expressed genuine appreciation for how I handled the situation. She's also acknowledged that her favoritism and enabling behavior contributed to my sister's problems and hurt our family relationships. I don't know if my sister will ever take responsibility for what she did or if she'll ever try to make amends. Part of me hopes she will, for Mom's sake if nothing else. But I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not going to let the possibility of reconciliation prevent me from protecting myself and Mom from future manipulation. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their destructive behavior, even when they're family. It also taught me that standing up to manipulation often reveals who people really are, and that's information worth having, even when it's painful. Looking back, I'm grateful that Mom threatened to cut me out of the will. It forced me to confront the family dynamics that had been toxic for years and gave me the motivation to uncover the truth about what was really happening. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is for someone to show you exactly where you stand with them.